everyone. You are listening to When They Forget, an Alzheimer's and Dementia Stories podcast. We're glad you're listening today, and we've got a great show for you. If you have a dementia or Alzheimer's story to share, we'd love to play it on our show. You can call and leave us a voicemail at 850-254-9595. And if you're an international listener, you can record a voice memo on your phone and email that to us at whentheyforgetpodcast@gmail.com. And if you don't want to record your story, you can send it to us in an email and we'll read it on the show. We do our best to get stories from our listeners, and we really need them to keep the show going, so please keep sending them in. In today's episode, Debbie and I are going to talk about our mom and technology, and especially how her Alzheimer's affected her use of cell phones, computers, and tablets. But first, we have some stories to share. Our first story comes from Laura from South Carolina. I first connected with Laura on Instagram a few years ago when she did a longest day fundraiser and went hiking in Scotland to raise money for the Alzheimer's Association. Here is her story.
Hey, my name is Laura. I live in Casey, South Carolina, just outside Columbia. I was born in England, but the rest of my family lived and still lives in Scotland. So my gran on my mom's side developed Alzheimer's just after I was born, and she unfortunately lost her fight in 2007, just before my 14th birthday. So I moved to North Carolina with my immediate family when I was 9, but we stayed in close contact with the rest of our family, including my gran and my grandpa, who was her primary caregiver. I remember a few instances where I really saw the symptoms of her Alzheimer's. The first experience I had was when they were down visiting us in England. We were sitting around the dinner table having dinner. She asked us what instruments we were playing, and then a few minutes later asked us the same question. I remember at the time thinking it was really funny, but when I look back, I realized that was one of the first symptoms of her Alzheimer's that I saw. I also remember a time we were back in Scotland visiting for the summer, and she was in the hospital, and I walked in the hospital room, and she actually called me by my grandpa's name, Davy, and that experience kind of shook me. I realized at that point she didn't really know who we were. So although I didn't experience caregiving firsthand, I saw the effects it had on my grandpa. It took a toll on his health, both physical and I'm sure mental, and I also saw that he didn't have all the resources that he needed. I saw many of the tough decisions, putting her in a memory care unit. I saw the fear when she ran away in the middle of the night. I also experienced, when we were driving to a hotel in Wilmington, North Carolina, we were going to the beach for a little vacation, but she thought we were taking her to a nursing home and tried to open the sliding door as we were driving down the road. I was sitting next to her, and I will honestly never forget seeing that. That experience really gave me a perspective on what my grandpa was dealing with on a daily basis and just how hard caregiving is. She had many other comorbidities and was on a lot of medication that my grandpa had to help manage. So seeing this difficulty is what led me to become a pharmacist. I became involved in the Alzheimer's Association as a volunteer in 2015, and in 2018 and 2019, I returned to Scotland and I walked about 175 miles between the two trips to raise awareness and funds for the Alzheimer's Association and also Alzheimer's Scotland. So my gran and grandpa both loved outdoors. They loved to travel. My grandpa actually used to own a bus company, and my gran did some of the financing for him. And then they also had a caravan or an RV that they used to travel the country in after he retired. So I did these walks in honor of both my gran and my grandpa, who had gone on to develop many health conditions that were probably exacerbated by the stress of caregiving. So as we know, Alzheimer's takes an enormous toll, obviously, on the person with the disease, but it also has an enormous toll on the caregiver and the family. So getting to explore my heritage while walking in honor of them and raising awareness for patients and caregivers alike was truly the greatest blessing. I will never forget those trips. They will live on for the rest of my life. There's so much stigma surrounding Alzheimer's, and caregivers, unfortunately, can often feel isolated. So my experience with other caregivers through my volunteer efforts, in addition to the experiences I saw with my grandpa, motivated me to go back and complete my Master's of Public Health. And I'm hoping when I graduate towards the end of this year to focus on health promotion and health education and help reduce the risk of Alzheimer's and other dementias, and also help support patients and caregivers and help break down some of that stigma.
Thanks for sharing your story, Laura, and for shining a light on caregivers and how isolating it can be. It is the main reason Debbie and I started this podcast. Laura is raising money again this year for the Longest Day. I've put a link to her fundraiser and her Instagram in the show notes. Our next story comes to us from right here in my city of Portland. She is one half of a sister duo who are taking care of their mother who has dementia. We connected on Instagram, and she has a powerful blog where she writes very openly and real about her mom and her feelings about dementia. She was also featured recently in the newspaper talking about COVID and the changes in her mother. I've put all the links in the show notes. And now here is her story.
Hi, my name is Lickety Glitz, and I am a fan of the When They Forget podcast. We are also two sisters from Portland, Oregon, and we're trying to get our mom through dementia with grace and humor. And I also document our own dementia journey on the blog Stumptown Dementia. So our two households have a lot in common, and that keeps me coming back to hear what they've got to say. I have a story to share from our early days of caring for our mom that always makes me smile. A little background, my mother was diagnosed with vascular dementia in 2012, and immediately my dad vowed he would take care of her at home until the day she died. He was ready to primary care give the crap out of her. My sister and I took a much more passive role. We would occasionally take mom out for lunch or a movie and sometimes come over to make them dinner. We were there, but not enough to really understand how far mom had progressed until 4 years into her diagnosis, my father died suddenly, pancreatic cancer. It was then that we understood mom could no longer live on her own. It was then that we understood what our dad had been shielding us from. And it was then that we stepped up as daughters to keep our mother in her home. I gave up my career and moved in with mom. My sister cut back her hours at her job to live with us 3 days a week so I could get a break. She would arrive and I would make a hasty retreat to the bottom floor of mom's split-level home, spending the next 36 hours grasping at some type of normalcy until it was again my turn to take my mom days. It was tough, but the sense of humor we inherited from our parents, a love of the absurd and an appreciation of life's unintended hilarity, as well as numerous wine nights plowing through mom and dad's wine stash, helped us cope. And no, FYI, my father, before he died, was afraid my sister and I wouldn't know what to do with all that wine. He was wrong. We immediately opened mom's life up to her friends and family. My dad was very insular, and mom's verbal skills had faded early on in the disease. So without her encouraging and or insisting on social engagements, their world had slowly shrunk. My mother has 8 siblings, so I decided I'd fill mom's days by rolling around the state visiting her brothers and sisters. I chose mom's oldest sister, the one she has always been closest to, as our first victim. But unlike a victim, my aunt was thrilled that we would make the 3-hour drive to spend time with her. She gushed and spewed out entertainment ideas for our visit, and on the spot began compiling a grocery list of goodies to please Mom. By the time I got off the phone with her, my head was spinning with all the words she had flung at it. The day came for our visit, and I was stressed. I, kept thinking, did I bring the right clothes for Mom? Did I have her meds? Where could we make bathroom stops on the way? Would we get there on time? Would my aunt be crushed by Mom's progression? How could I ensure Mom would be in a good mood for that long of a drive? And, so in a good mood when we got there. I got into Mom's van and got her in on her side, and then realized we had no gas in the tank. I'd forgotten to fill it up the night before. Crap. Then I realized there was a Starbucks close to the gas station, and wouldn't it be great to get Mom her favorite drink and a treat to boost her spirits for the beginning of our adventure? Well, we got to Starbucks. She didn't want to go in. I got her in. She didn't want to wait in line. I got in line, keeping one eye on her. She kept her eyes on a napkin dispenser and decided she needed to free all the napkins from their metal box bondage. I left her to her own devices and tipped big as my means of apology to the staff before stumbling away with treats and coffee for the road. As we were driving to the gas station, Mom kept trying to take the lid off of her scalding coffee. At first, I kept gently stopping her. Then I was firmly stopping her. Then I was forcefully stopping her, and none of it worked. We were both irritated with each other, and my stress levels were soaring as I tried to keep my cool. At the gas station, I told him to fill it up. Then I attempted to secure the lid back on the cup of coffee yet again, but the cup holders in the van did not offer a super firm surface to do so, so I couldn't get it to click. I spied the level top of a garbage can next to the pump that would work and jumped out to achieve my goal. "I'll be right back, Mom," I said to her nonverbal but very pouty face. As I was futzing with the lid to get it to snap on, I heard a soft voice say, "Backwards." I was too focused on my task to notice until I heard it a third time with a tad bit more urgency than the first and second utterance. I looked over my shoulder to see our 1995 Dodge van ever so slowly rolling back, stopping with a sickening thump on the front end of a brand new, shiny black Trans Am. I muttered under my breath as I rushed to the driver's seat. I was waiting for some muscle-bound, hard-nosed jerk to get out and give me what for. As I went to throw the van and drive and get its back bumper dislodged from the hood of the Trans Am, I realized I had never put it in park in the first place. I stumbled out of the van, having set the Trans Am free by a few feet, and went to receive my comeuppance. I immediately started babbling about Mom having dementia and how I was so preoccupied with her behavior I'd screwed up. But when I rounded the back of the van, I saw an older, pot-bellied gentleman examining his car in silence. I was so shocked that my preconceived notion of what kind of a person buys a brand new Trans Am was so off base that it shut me up for good. He continued to walk around the front of his car, arms crossed, with a few disgusted glances in my direction. I, feebly mumbled, "Mom, dementia," again, until he waved me off, got back in his car, and drove away. When I got back in the van, my sullen mother was full of mirth. We had gotten away with something. She was like a teenager who snuck out after curfew and never got caught, giddy with naughtiness. We made it to my aunt's late, but were welcomed with open arms. My aunt did struggle with Mom's progression at first, but after a couple hours, she adapted, and by the time we left, had fully embraced who her sister was, not who she wasn't. We are still making our trips over the mountains and through the woods to my aunt's house. A couple weeks ago, we limited our visit to the driveway in her yard. We were masked up and ready for fun. But Mom's never had as much fun on the journey as she did that first time when we hit the Trans Am.
Thank you for sharing that story. It's another reason my sister and I started this podcast. To remember the good times that maybe didn't seem so great at the time, but in reflection, were really pretty great.
Our next story comes from one of my favorite people, my son, Lucas. And to be honest, I bamboozled him a little bit in order to get this recording. I asked him a question on Polo to talk about one of the times that he went over to his Nana's to help her put together her stereo system and her TV. And he responded back with his video response, and we recorded it, and we're going to play it for you now. But we do have his permission. And the one thing that you need to know about Lucas, actually all of our kids, Jen's and mine, is that they all have a very special relationship with Nana. And she's always been such an involved grandparent. She has loved them fiercely, and each one of them has a very special and unique relationship with her. And Lucas is no different. He really has a lot of patience when it comes to her, and he just loves her to death, and she adores him. So I think this is a pretty sweet story talking about how he helped her with some of her technology. So I hope you enjoy it.
With going over to Nana's house, I guess, I think the time that I remember the most was the Lakewood apartment that she had. I think I might have been over there for longer because I don't know if I went over there multiple times or if it was all in one visit. I can't really remember, but I know that I set up her computer, did something on her computer, and then also set up her TV. I remember the TV thing was the one that was always the hardest to set up, I guess, because she had like 4 boxes or something like that. She had like a separate sound system with her cable box, TV, DVD player, and she needed everything set up like exactly the right way. Probably because old people and electronics don't really mix too well. And she she would remember the buttons or remember the settings or something like that for where everything was, and that was always a hassle because I don't know, I never liked setting up the sound system part of it just because every sound system just doesn't make sense to set up. But I think that's why I was over there for so long, was just because setting it all up was kind of a pain in the ass. So yeah, I don't think she could have set it up. Other than that though, it's the computer thing is, I don't really remember doing too much on the computer. I don't remember viruses. Maybe, there may have been viruses. I have no idea, but yeah, I don't really remember too much on exactly what I do. I think one time something was up with their internet connection, and I think it was because I want to say it was the cable wasn't plugged in. I'm pretty sure was what it was, but she was it took a while to get to that point to figure out what was going on. But yeah, I think it was something the cable wasn't plugged in, or maybe the router wasn't set up correctly because that was Lakewood as well. And I think it was when she was moving in when I went over and helped her set that stuff up. It's a pain in the neck, but I don't know. I was happy to do it because I knew there's no chance she could do it. So, but yeah, that's pretty much what I remember from that. I remember drinking. We had some Diet Coke because she had Diet Coke all the time, caffeine free. So I remember drinking that and working on the TV and stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much what I remember from it. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Lucas. I know your mom and I roped you into that one, but I appreciate you sharing the story. Lucas moved up here to the Portland area a few years ago, and for a lot of years we had Wednesday night dinner with my mom, and we invited Lucas, and he showed up every single week. Oftentimes when Mom was upset with me or focused on something, it was Lucas who was able to walk with her to the table and sit down and talk to her, and he saved the day more times than I can count.
Before we continue with our podcast, we wanted to talk to you about how you can submit your stories to us. And we are really at your mercy with, sending your stories to us and telling us about your loved ones and experiences that you have had caring for those with Alzheimer's and dementia. And there's several different ways that you can get in touch with us and send us your story. Of course, you can record a voicemail. We have a phone number. It's 850-254-9595. And you get about 5 minutes. So if your voicemail goes longer than that, just call back, pick up where you left off, and we will do the rest. Jennifer is an amazing editor. She'll probably edit that right out. You can also record a voice memo on your phone and email it to us. Our email address is whentheyforget@gmail.com. And you could even go so far as to record something on Snapchat or Marco Polo and save it to your phone and email that to us. We promise not to show your face, but we would love to hear your voice and we would love to hear your stories. So email them to us, send them to us on Facebook or any of the socials, or give us a call. We would love to hear from you and love to hear your stories. All right, now let's get back to the show.
Hi, sister.
Hi, sister. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I am hanging tight.
Yep. That's how I feel too. I'm got my fingernails out. I'm hanging on by my fingernails this week.
Yep, me too.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about mom and technology today.
Yes.
And I'll be honest. I mean, I'm going to just throw my little pieces of what I remember in, but I'm just going to do a disclaimer at the beginning of this that I gave up on mom a long time ago because she frustrated me so much. I mean, I gave up on her when I was married to Sam, and Sam was giving her technical support.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, she couldn't find the power button on a computer with 2 hands and a flashlight sometimes.
Yeah.
And it was just, I would get so frustrated with her. And if I tried to say, well, I'll just do it myself, then she would get mad at me and she would say, no, you have to show me. And I password protected all of my computers at my house so that she couldn't get onto them, because she would get on and get onto her Hotmail. Remember Hotmail?
I do remember Hotmail.
I think Hotmail still exists, but she would get on her Hotmail and she would just, oh, John sent me a link because he needs money because he's stuck in South Africa and he can't get home. Let me click on this link.
Yep.
Oh, what's going on with my computer?
Yep.
And I would just get so frustrated with her. And so I'll be honest, I mean, I will say what I remember, and I'm probably just going to go, because a lot of this conversation, because I gave up on her ages ago. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it.
And yet, she categorized all of her albums and CDs in an old Access database. Remember? Did you ever see the database that she put together?
No.
Okay.
I see. You told me about that in a text message or in that Marco Polo, and I had no idea what you were talking about. I had no idea that she'd ever done that.
Yeah, when she lived in her condo, the place with the blue tin roof, she put together an Access database on her computer. Put in every album and CD she had. She put in whether or not it was vinyl or a CD, genre of music, and then the slot that they were in her disc changer, because in her CD changer she could hold 100 CDs. And so she put them in there and she put in the number. And to me, it blew my mind that she did that in 2003 or 4. She put that whole thing together all by herself. And then a few years later, couldn't understand not to click on an email from John who needed money in South Africa.
I know. I wonder if she did that at the time, if it coincides with when she was a couple. Because I used to work at a radio station, and that's how we categorized all of our music, was in an Access database, so that we could just pull up a genre or an artist or whatever, and it would tell us exactly where that song was in order to play it. So I wonder if that doesn't coincide with her time at couple.
Yeah, it does. I'm pretty sure it does because she moved from Oregon down there in 2005 and 2005 or 6, 2006. So this was like 2003, 2002 that I
Wow.
first saw the database.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I didn't know that, but it is interesting how quickly technology became this obstacle for her. It was like her brain just did not function
Yeah.
correctly when it came to technology, and she just couldn't figure it all out.
Yeah.
And she would just start pressing buttons and unplugging things, and oh my God, I'm getting a headache.
Yeah. Yeah, because she still does that. When we used to go visit her in memory care, she would say, my picture frame doesn't work. And Brian would go over and look at it, and she had unplugged it and taken the power cord and wrapped it up and stuck it in her bottom drawer inside a sock. Well, there's why her picture frame doesn't work.
Yeah, I call that SUI, stupid user error. But I use that with a lot of different people, not just Mom. Mom and her technology, really the only thing that, like I said, I checked out, but one of the big things that I remember when she moved to Arizona was she had quite a little setup with her TV hooked into her stereo speakers, hooked up to her VCR, hooked up to her cable box, and I mean, she had components.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe they came with her from Oregon, although I don't really know if she bought them while she was down in Arizona. But it was every time she would call and she would say, my TV doesn't turn on. I really just wanted to crawl under a rock. And it got to the point where Lucas, sometimes Josh, but mostly Lucas, because Lucas has, he doesn't have a lot of patience when it comes to his mother or his sister or his little brother. But when it comes to his Nana, he has the patience of Job.
Yeah.
I mean, he would go over there probably weekly and be like, well, Nana, you unplugged this and you need to plug this back in. He tried to, write out instructions about, this remote works with this and, this remote works here, and, he really did his best, and he would just try and show her everything, and then when she would mess it up, he would go right back over. That's really the big technology, besides the viruses on her computer, and that was really Josh, most of the time, would go over to her house, clean up her computer, reinstall Windows, because she'd gotten a virus. And he would, go through her computer and try and, figure out. And it eventually got to the point where her computer just wouldn't turn on at all.
Wow. Yeah, that was the gateway that got moved up here.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, when she came here for the wedding, when Brian and I got married, and that was the summer of 2011, she was here for 2 weeks. And that was the most amount of time I had spent consecutively with her, probably in my entire adulthood. She stayed in our guest room. She was in our apartment. She did everything with me. We went shopping, which I talked about in the shopping episode for the wedding a few times. Trying on the dress. Everybody trying on their suit fittings. I mean, all of that stuff. She was with us for all of it. In the first few days that she was with me, she wanted to get on the computer, and I password protected everything too. I unlocked my computer. She was just going to check her email. And I don't even think it was 5 minutes later, and she comes out into the dining room, and she gives me this face, and she's like, something's wrong with your computer. And I made probably the heaviest sigh I've ever made in my life. And walked in there, and of course, there's pop-up windows everywhere. And all of these flashing things. And she had gotten an email from Karen or something like that. And she said, Karen from the school emailed me and needed me to download something. Or, because she was... At that point, it was 2011. I don't know if she was working for the Key Lime School District. Oh, I still don't remember the name of it. The Kyrene School District, right?
Good girl. Yes.
Thank you. So, or, it was a name of a person that was generic enough to be recognizable to her as somebody she might know. And she downloaded something and got a virus on my computer. Luckily, I was able to turn it off, restore it back to an image from like the day before or something like that. And I didn't have to reboot or restore the entire operating system. But after that, I had her check her email while I was sitting there. Like, I checked her email. I went through it with her because I just couldn't deal with getting a virus on my computer because I worked from home,
Mm-hmm.
And then when she went to live with Kathy in 2013, I don't even think she was at Kathy's house once we moved her to Oregon after she'd been diagnosed. She wasn't there for more than a week when Kathy called me and said, Jan, I hate to tell you this, but your mom got a virus on my computer and I can't use it. So we had to drive out there and I had to fix her computer too. Yeah.
Oh, I know. Those phishing scams, I mean, they prey on the elderly.
I think
they
so.
They really do.
Yeah.
And it's, they find a name of a family member, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, I understand that she didn't know what she was doing and everything, but I don't know. I get frustrated, and I got frustrated with her. I try not to, but it was always like, Mom, how can you not know that you shouldn't hit the button? You shouldn't download that.
Yeah, I agree.
You're not supposed to download things. And, and but she would just be so concerned about Karen or John or, Richard or whoever it was that just rung a bell with her. And that's just the computer.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't even gotten into the iPad
or the Kindle. Yeah. Yeah, so what we did is in the Christmas of 2013, right? So it was right after she was diagnosed. We thought, let's get her a Kindle. It's easy to use. She won't be able to get on the internet or check her email on it. We can give her a gift card and set it up so she can buy some books. And so we got her this paper white Kindle, and we put, I can't remember what it was, $50 or $100 on it. And then she brings it to Oregon, and she spent all of the money right away. But because of the way the Kindle was set up, which you and I didn't even think about, all the books that are available through Kindle were showing on the screen. So she thought that all of those books were her books, even though they were books for sale. And so she would click on them and then, of course, be out of money. And after she moved into the first assisted living she was in, and even into the second assisted living, so for a year or two while she tried to use that Kindle, she would call Amazon and she would write down every person's name that she talked to. She would write down, find out what country they were in, because she thought it was fascinating that she was talking to people all over the world who worked in customer service. And then she would get mad and start to yell at them that her Kindle didn't work. They did not know what was going on with her. So she's talking in circles. They're trying to do their customer service best. And she just kept saying, transfer me to somebody else, transfer me to someone else. I got over there one day. She'd been on the phone for about 5 or 6 hours because I called and it was busy the whole time. I couldn't get through to her. And we go over there. She is still on the phone. She's red in the face, yelling at somebody, and then tells me afterwards that she'd been on the phone with Kindle for 5 hours and that they stole her money and that they stole all her books and won't let her read them.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And didn't she reset her password a bunch of times?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah. I actually have the little blue book in my desk drawer. She had this little blue notebook and she wrote all kinds of notes in it. And she would write down Gmail or write down, write down her username or password. Her password for a while was almost always the same and easy for you and I to put in because she told us what it was and she kept using the same one. But then as she started resetting her password, she couldn't remember what they were and she didn't remember to write them down. Yeah, that Kindle, it was just, that Kindle was screwed by the time she got done with it. It didn't work. Her books were gone. It was just bad news.
I felt really bad for the people that she talked to at Amazon because they really didn't have any clue what was going on. I remember one of her passwords had something to do with Darlene.
Yep.
But it had something to do with Darlene's birth year, but then she remembered her birth year wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had put it in the wrong birth year.
Yeah.
It was all very, very strange. I also remember the Blue Notebook because when she was, we were dealing with her bills and all of that, her banking and everything was passwords. And so I remember seeing that Blue book, and that was just chaos.
Yeah.
That little Blue book was just chaos.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand most of it. But you can glean some of her passwords out of there, and we could try them, but a lot of times, even then, they were outdated, and she had already changed them and hadn't written down the new one.
Yeah. Yeah, that book is a good window into what was happening in her brain at the time. Because it went from the beginning with phone numbers and information that made sense, and then the more she wrote in it, it was just a mess. And it was so hard to even understand what she was trying to write down.
Yeah.
And so the last thing that we did, and I laugh, was we thought, okay, the Kindle is not working. So let's get her an iPad, because if babies and 2-year-olds can use an iPad, Mom...
I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing, but it is so freaking hysterical.
It is so funny how we rationalize.
We really did have this thought. I mean, my granddaughter has been playing on a tablet since she was like 18 months old. And she's perfectly fine.
Yeah. So we thought if tiny children can do it, Nana, our mom can use an iPad, no problem. It's so simple. There's the home button. You can't go wrong,
I'm sorry. I know. It's so funny.
It is funny. So we got her that, and I set her up with a Gmail account, in which I think she had set up for the Kindle. A new Gmail account because she couldn't remember the password that's right to her Hotmail account. She had changed it and couldn't remember it. So we set her up with a Gmail account, and I wrote that down in the little blue book, and I showed her the iPad, and I downloaded Facebook, and she had a Facebook account. I think she has 3 Facebook accounts now because she kept locking herself out, so she just created a new one. And I put on there Facebook. I put some games on there. There was a few other apps that I installed on it. And I showed her how to use it, and everything seemed fine. And it wasn't even a couple days later where she called and said, Jen, I can't figure out this iPad. I can't figure out how to use it. Something's wrong with it. It's broken. Jensen and her boyfriend at the time went over there to visit her and actually reset the entire thing and set Mom up with an iCloud email account, whatever the Apple email account is. So then he reset the whole thing and gave her a whole new email account and a whole new password. And so when I went over there, I didn't really even know what was going on with the iPad, and all of the information I had written down didn't even matter anymore. And what Mom was doing, I figured out, was she would go to settings, and then from settings on the iPad, she would go into Facebook. And that was just the settings. But I really think she looked at settings kind of like it was the Windows home button.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So she thought that if she went there, like the Windows home button, and then the whole menu of all the programs, if she clicked into the programs, then she would be able to get to them. But what she did was she ended up in Facebook, and then she would see password, and she would see privacy and security, and she kept changing her password to Facebook and to a few other things. She took the iPad into the Apple store one day.
Oh, I feel so sorry for those
Yeah.
people. She did that more than once.
Yeah, she did. She took that in there a number of times. What she wanted to do was talk on the phone on it. And she couldn't understand why she couldn't get the phone to work. Because she could see through the FaceTime that she could FaceTime people, but she didn't understand when she took it with her why it didn't work, because it was on Wi-Fi. She also, I might add, carried her actual cordless phone with her in her purse, thinking that that was going to work while she was gone from the house.
Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah. Yeah, so the iPad story ended badly. It was Thanksgiving the next year, and she brought it along because it wasn't working. And we were sitting on the couch at my father-in-law's house, and there was a lot of people there. And I was trying to help her with the iPad, and she got irritated. And, you know, she had a tendency sometimes to throw things at people. As you know, she threw mail at you. She's thrown things at people. She picked up that iPad, grabbed it out of my hands, and chucked it at me. And I was embarrassed at the time, sitting there on the couch with these people watching us. There was one man, an older man there, my father-in-law's cousin, who opened his mouth to say something. And I think he saw the look on my face, and he thought better of saying anything at all. And so I saw his mouth open, like he was going to speak, and then, oh, no, I better not. I took that iPad, and I went to Brian, and I said, I need to leave. I probably won't be back. Just make sure Mom's okay. And I got in the car. I drove all the way home, and I sat on the couch, and I cried for a good half an hour. And we were supposed to go out later with Joe and Tim for another dinner with them and Nana. And I told Joe, I said, I can't do it. I hope it's okay if Nana doesn't go. And, you know, I look back on it now. Mom walked around that house asking where I was for almost the whole dinner. And Brian he just kept saying she didn't feel well. She went home. She'll be back. He took her home and dropped her off, and I didn't talk to her for a few days afterwards. Like, it was just so much, so quick. And at the time, I really did not understand fully at all what Alzheimer's meant or what was happening in her brain.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I look back on how upset and angry and frustrated I got with her. And I probably talked to her, I mean, this is an over-exaggeration, but 300 times about that iPad over the years. You stole it. Mm-hmm. You ruined it.
Yep.
You know, and, you know, she just didn't understand. And she would press the home button thinking that that was going to solve all her problems. And if you double tap the home button, you know, the apps open up. I have no idea really what she was thinking, but her brain just, I don't even think she could handle that. They make that granny pad or grandpad now.
Yeah.
I don't even think she could handle that.
No.
But do you also remember in that whole iPad fiasco that the Apple store sold her an iPod and told her she could talk on the phone on it?
I do remember that. She comes back
having... Oh my God.
I know, I was so mad. I was so upset. And
then they wouldn't take it back?
No, they wouldn't.
They gave her an Apple gift card.
Yep.
What was she going to do with an Apple gift card when nothing in that entire store she could use?
Yeah. Yeah, that was frustrating. I tried to call thinking she went to one Mac store, and I talked to the manager of the store and kind of tried to explain the situation to see. And he couldn't really give me too much information. But as it turns out, she went to a different Mac store. So I was speaking to the wrong manager who had really no idea who she was. But yeah, they gave her an iPod, told her it was a phone. I can only imagine how frustrated and maybe even sales driven and time driven the salesperson was dealing with Mom. Because if she's in there talking in circles about her technology, saying she wants a phone, maybe the customer service person just threw up her hands after a while and was like, okay, fine, here, take this. You can download Skype. It'll be a phone.
I know, I can just see it. I mean, it's like the bank manager who ran into the back when they saw Nana coming. I mean, she took the little, the bus over to Washington Square Mall, I don't know how many times, to the Apple store. I mean, they must have seen her coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the iPad, she would take the iPad in there. But the iPad, if I remember right, you had bought through Verizon.
Uh-huh.
So it's not that the Apple store was going to do anything for her.
Yeah.
Because she had to take it to Verizon, and she didn't understand that.
No.
And it was just all, she would put that iPod in her purse, and then she would go to Bi-Mart, and she would try to call me, and it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Oh, it was all very frustrating for her. She did not understand any of that, and I'm glad now that technology is not even her thing. She couldn't even conceptualize. I mean, we show her pictures on our phone when we could go in and see her, and she would look at them, but she wouldn't really even be interested in the phone anymore. And that's good.
Yeah, she doesn't even know what to do with a cordless phone now, because that was part of our window issue at the beginning. As we would sit outside and it was cold, the window would be closed, she would be on the phone and not even know to hold it up to her ear. She didn't even know what to do with it. So.
Yeah. It's all in that, Alzheimer's was just eating away a little piece of her brain at a time. And, the technology just became impossible for her to understand.
Yeah.
And to deal with. And, I look back on it now, and I mean, I'm sure you do too. It was a cause of a lot of heartache and a lot of dissension between me and Mom, and then you and Mom.
Yeah.
And, kind of ruined some of those moments that we could have had with her that would have been lucid, but there's nothing we could do about it. We didn't know, and she was so fixated on wanting a phone, and that goes with her independence and all of that. And, wanting the computer and the email and the Facebook and wanting to be able to do it herself, but not being able to figure it out. But, she just, I mean, if we're going to go really simple now, at her memory care place, you guys have put in a TV and a cable box so she could watch her Hallmark channel in her room, and she couldn't even do that.
Nope. She would press the wrong button on the remote, and then she would unplug the TV or unplug something. They actually ended up taking the TV, the cable box part of the TV, out of her room. They left the TV sitting there. So one of the last times Brian and I were in there, he picks up the remote to try to turn it on, and I looked at him and he looked at me, and we're both like, the cable box is gone. So then I just said something to Mom. I said, let me take the TV and we'll try to fix it and bring it back if we can. So we ended up taking the TV and never brought it back.
I remember also, and this is going to go back in time just a little bit if we rewind, is I think you and I haven't fought in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, there's just really nothing to fight about anymore between us. I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
But I remember one of the most heated conversations we had is when I told you that I was thinking about getting Mom another iPad.
Yes, I was mad.
You were so mad at me because I was like, Tommy at that point had an iPad, and it wasn't an iPad. We keep on using iPad, but tablet of some kind. I was like, what if we get her this one? Lock it down.
Yeah, you wanted to get her a Samsung Galaxy Tab or something like that, and you were going to lock it down. And I was like, no, you cannot do that.
I just, I was long distance, and I was talking to her on the phone, and she seemed so upset about not having an iPad and not being able to get on Facebook. All she wanted was Netflix.
Yeah.
She wanted to be able to watch Netflix. And I'm like, well, if I put her on my Netflix account, how bad could she mess it up? I was thinking to myself, I gave her her own account. How bad could she mess it up? So I asked you the question, and I think that's the last heated conversation we ever had, and it was a few years ago. It is what it is. At least it's, we're past that now. It's kind of sad we're past it because she's pretty far gone, but at the same time, technology really challenges the Alzheimer's patient.
Yeah. And that's our show, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. We'd love it if you would rate and share this podcast, and we'd especially love it if you called in and shared your dementia or Alzheimer's story with us so we can share it with our listeners. When they forget, we remember.